voices of my people tells me that they're reaching maturity. Their spirit shows that determination for a new society. Though plagued by injustice, misfortune and strain, and constant oppression, I force our change. Though we fail to get along, there's one thing we have in common. The oppression we bear will forge us as one. Rise, 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 rise. People, open up your eyes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everybody who is out there listening to Vaughan Radio tonight. My name is Glendale Herbert, coming to you again once more on a Monday night at 8:30 here at the Voice of Nevis, VON Radio. To all of those who are out there in the diaspora listening far afield and those who are close, we are happy and indeed a pleasure it's for us to come out to you once more. And my name is Glendale Herbert once more, your host, along with...
I am Andy Liebert. Good evening to the people in Radio Land. We are here to continue the informative session, and we hope that you're tuning and you're listening keenly. We would be presenting again tonight.
Yes, we had a good week. I hope everyone had a good week since we last left you. The response to our parents here on Vaughan Radio, I felt at least was pretty much encouraging. I think Andy would share that with the people he's been in contact with, and we're looking forward to at least continue to uptick or at least lift, our presence with you. Last week we spoke about five or so issues we brought to the fore that we thought would be very important in terms of our democracy here in this country. Of course, we are what is called a public interest organization, and we try to bring the issues forward that are in front of the people and try to bond with the people and at least look towards the aspiration of the people and point in that direction. Where there is policy, we try to give some sort of clarity as to the policy and how that policy can be tweaked. Our role is not here. Our role basically is to at least avail to those who are aspiring for office or those who are in office to at least look beyond the way they normally look at the policy that they intend to enact, and at least make a commentary and at least do a service to the public by informing the public of an alternate policy and an alternate way of doing things, or a way that has been overlooked. And of course, this can be quite helpful. I've also often said to many people, Andy, you don't necessarily have to be in government to be useful. You can be quite useful. You can be quite helpful and involved, and do good work without being within the throes of government. So, without going any much further as it relates to those things are, I want to begin. Tonight's show is going to be very interesting. We are going to bring something in the second part of the show that we think is going to be it could be a game changer in our politics. But before we go there, I want to just touch on a few things we discussed that we didn't really go in depth with last week, and bring out a little bit more that we think that should be useful to you, the public, to think about as it relates to the policy that is offered up by the current government. Andy, one of the things I want to go back on quickly is the PEP to STEP program. We spoke about that last week. And when we spoke about it from the vantage point of the private sector, or those who are the entities that takes on PEP and STEP workers, avail themselves, or at least pay $100 extra per week to the workers who are employed by them, and we thought that is a plausible thing if these companies or entities could do that by increasing their salaries from, let's say, $340, $360 to by $100 to $440 to $460. That would ultimately lead to $1,760, I think it was, that would create a livable wage in this country. We're talking about 5,000 people who are on this program in this country. That is St. Kitts Nevis. And we feel by doing that, it creates a drag upwards in the economy, meaning that those who are in the private sector and entities would be forced to be at least up their wage, the bottom line wage that they pay to people, meaning that effectively you get a minimum wage without it goes into legislation. And we also said that a lot of these entities cannot, they're in a position where they cannot release these workers because they've become dependent on these workers. These workers has been there with them for a good while. Oftentimes, many of the employees that they have had prior to these workers, some have left, and they have not replaced them. And that money that they would have been paying to those persons is basically pocketed, and government continues to pay these workers. So we thought that is quite an injustice and a wrong that can be righted or corrected by a simple mandate from government to the institutions. Because originally, like I said, the institution were supposed to be taking on the workers full time on their payroll after 6 months or something. I think that's how the legislation, the program was rolled out. Is there anything you think? What do you think about that?
Yes, I do believe and I strongly support the employers step up a little with the money that they receive from the PEP so that the employees can go home at the end of the week or at the end of the month with a salary that is livable. And that is what we are here to speak about. We do understand that this is an initiative, and the government did approach some of these firms asking them to take on the extra person. But as Glendale pointed out, they're not really extra persons anymore. They are actually employed and doing the work that they would have normally pay individuals to do. And because of that, I think that they should supplement that salary so that these people can go home with a livable wage.
Yeah, I think that would be quite useful and quite, fitting in this country in terms of giving people their dignity and allowing them to move up at least in the social ladder and the economic ladders. We think that would be quite helpful, and we hope that would reach the inner sanctum of government where they make these policy decisions. In addition to that, we did speak last week about the $1 per square foot issue that the government had rolled out, the $1 per square foot for university graduates. That we thought was well received. There is about 3.5 acres of land that is being on offer, which would be roughly around 18 homes for these people, and the government is willing to issue those or give those basically to university graduates or returnees who are coming back to this land. Our position has been that we did not think that was the best way to roll out that policy. We thought that policy was flawed. Frankly, I believe that, like we pointed out last week, and from a cursory survey, we found that most of the the business establishments in this country, pretty much owned by people who did not go to university. We're not saying that we're against going to university, or at least we applaud those who do, and we encourage everybody to go to university. But the point is, we thought that many of these people, of course, got a leg up. Some had scholarships, some got stipend, and those who did not, okay, fine. But another thing, it seemed to me that a lot of these folks may very well have a position in the civil service there for them when they come back. In the event, and we believe it's another golden parachute that is offered to them. We feel when you look at the facts as it is on the ground, with all the establishments in this country, except for maybe doctors and lawyers, invariably they're manned and owned by, like I said, people who did not go, not college graduates. Yes, people may make the argument, of course, folks who go into business may get concessions here and there. Okay, fine, that is fine, but at the end of the day, These are the people who create the taxpayers in this country. They create them by creating employment in every sector of the economy. Now, my main thrust in this is basically to say that folks who are coming back, I think if you can give them $1 per square foot for these lands, but it must come with something. And the something I'm looking for, you see, before I even go there, St. Kitts Nevis enjoys the second best economy in the entire Caribbean, I guess next to the Bahamas, and lifestyles, and in the Caribbean, which is phenomenal. And it's a great achievement. And if we can do that on the backs of those, many of those people who are churning out, driving this economy, who owners of these establishments who are not college graduates, and we're able to do that and drive this economy like that. Can you imagine if we were only able to unleash the power in this country of the intellectuals and those people who went to universities, who many of them were parked up in the civil service? If they'll only go out and use the intellectual prowessness and the best skills and best business habits and all the stuff they have learned in higher learning to take the country to another level, could you imagine where we would have been, in the Caribbean in terms of being number one, in the world? Matter of fact, I think opportunities and the possibilities are endless in this country if we can only encourage more people to go into the private sector. No, the government has just introduced this program where I think last week they had some sort of symposium or something where the $5 million was from Taiwan or borrowed from Taiwan or something, were allocated to people under 35 to go into business. Well, I hope as a part of them getting $1 per square foot, they will come in not looking for a job, but with a business plan in hand for a business that the government has for example, I don't know if the government has identified sectors where there are needs in the economy, sectors where they need business in the economy in terms of growing, broadening the economy. And not just coming in and say, well, I'm going to be a hairdresser. I'm just giving an example, that we have many of those. Come in with a unique business, something that add value to the economy and add multiple jobs to the economy. And I'm hoping that when these folks come with their returnees and applying for this $1 per square foot, is something that's going to add value to the economy that they're going to present. And I'm also hoping, Andy, that even if they come with a good business plan, there's some sort of board or some sort of to review these business plan in terms of the business plan credibility, its effectiveness, its possibility in terms of being a business that would flourish into the future and take on employees and add value to the country. I mean, I would hope there's a board, and I'd hope there's a board with business people with deep business experience, because meeting a payroll and having the experience of meeting a payroll is a different thing from working inside government. You understand? And the last thing I would like to say, this country is ranked 150th thereabout in the ease of doing business in the world. There's only 190 countries in the world in the UN. And as far as I am concerned, that is bad, because we are ranked last in the Caribbean, almost last or last in the Caribbean along with Haiti. That is abominable as far as I'm concerned. For us to be in that position to frustrate business people or entrepreneurs who come into the country and to get business going could be very difficult and torturous. And I believe we don't need to be, I don't want them to be parked up in the civil service. I want them to go out there and rub their knuckles and bruise off their knuckles trying to create a business, much like some of us have done, Andy.
Yes, I can attest to the problems that we face doing business in Nevis, especially locals. I've heard investors complain about how difficult it is to get responses and to get licensed, to get going when they try to do business here. But I can also speak to local people who try to do business in Nevis. It's almost as if the system is against them and trying to shut them down even before they start. We feel that doing business, especially local, should be in some case supplemented by government, afforded by government, and government should give all the assistance they can to local businesses to ensure that they are successful. because the local businesses, the local small businesses are really the engine of any economy. So if we want to build a strong economy in Nevis, you really need the complements of government and government organization to ensure that these businesses are successful, they move. We have to remember that they employ people. And when you have a business that employ people and it has to close down because of lack of support and a lot taxes, there are people who would be put out of work. And so our policy, the PDA policy, is a Nevision first policy. And we believe that we are supposed to empower our people, and we are calling on the government to ensure that they put a system in place whereby local entrepreneurs can operate business in the land that they are a part of without any hassle and without too much blockade and that kind of thing. So this is what we're here about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the frustration of businessmen who wants to do business in Nevis, I've known investors and I've heard investors who come to this country and with money in hand, some of them, you know, to do major projects or trying to do projects, and they're strung out for a year, 2 years, whatever the case is. They can't hold all this money. They have to put this money someplace to grow, meaning to get something on their dollar. And whatever percentage, even if they have, let's say, a pension fund, or they're controlling people money, some sort of fund that they came with, and they promise these people they're going to get 10% on the dollar, and 6 months gone, 8 months gone, a year goes, and they can't. They have to go back to, you know, to their lenders and say, or the investors, so to speak, and say, look, we can't give you the money because the project has not moved or can't move. They have to move to another territory and put the money in another territory, or put the money somewhere else. So, I mean, we have to be a little bit more, you know, sensitive to these things. And I say again, the ease of doing business is very torturous. It's difficult, and it should not be this way. I think we need to look at the system and streamline the system from a civil service standpoint, whereby we can encourage business in the country, and, you know, make it easier for people to come online. And again, going back to the $1 per square foot thing, if we're encouraging folks with higher learning to the country, so we can lift the country in terms of technology in other areas where, of course, people who didn't go to higher learning will not be able to do. They have to come with credible, sensible business plan that is workable and pliable in this country, and it can be, you know, and can move the country in a different direction and broaden the economic mix of the country. And, you know, I am merely saying that has to be looked at very seriously, because properties in this country is a very serious thing, and lands in this country is a very serious thing to people. It's very close to the people's heart. And make a quick transition. We spoke about the airport last week, which was important again. We did say we were lengthening the runway from 500 to 1,000 feet. I have learned from credible source, serious credible source in this country, of course, it can go up to 1,500 feet. Credible sources at the highest levels in this country. There's enough room to 1,500 feet as it is, without even going into the sea as it is. So, I mean, that is something that is encouraging. I also know to build 1 mile of road in this country costs about $3 million. That is 5,280 feet. We're talking about 1,500 feet, so we're talking about maybe $2.something million just on a runway. You can throw in a little bit more, because there's some, you know, other things that you have to meet FAA standard with. And of course the pad and parking areas and all that sort of stuff for the FBO, fixed operation, FBO has to be in place. And for the private jets that we spoke about, there's also, I learned over the week or so, I've learned of some study that was done by the Four Seasons people when Bill Gates took it over. His people took it over. I learned of some study when they looked at the airport, because they wanted to raise, at least increase their footprint in Nevis. And they looked at the airport, how it can be how it can be expanded and stuff, and to at least allow for that their footprint to be expanded. Because one of the problems with boats coming over at nights and boats coming in the evening, a lot of old people can't travel and they bounce in on the water taxi, and they're not comfortable, the older folks, so they'll stay away. So I mean, it's all about business. It's all about expanding. It's all about thinking Nevis first. It's all about our country and the posterity of this country. I keep saying it, the posterity of this country is very important. And not only the posterity, but the prosperity of the country is also important, Andy.
Yes, the airport is well overdue. It's something that should have been done years ago. Where today we can't get stuff in here directly. You can't get people in, you can't get them out. We are not airlifting anybody into Nevis. And God knows, if we have a hurricane or some real terrible rough seas and it persists for a long time, we have a serious problem in this country because we can't get food flying directly into Nevis. We do need to have something more than just sea transport, bringing goods and services into this country. So the airport, I think, is something that we must seriously look at. Because I am in that kind of business and I can speak to it. I know the hassles we have getting stuff here, especially on great demand, is very difficult. And in order to get it, you probably have to charter a plane or charter a boat. It's very expensive. If we have that service, then it would improve the service that we're giving to the visitors that we're asking to come to our shores.
And everything we speak about is in terms of expanding the country. That is what we are focusing on, expanding the country bottom line in terms of revenues, how we can bring more foreign currency into the country. Airport would do that through a fixed base operation once it's in place for the private jets. And it would also bring it from, even if we did the major charters from the mainland and Canada. It would transform the country in many ways. I mean, you might have an uptick of about 60 to 100 jobs as a result of this. That means something. That's mean more spending power in the country. Again, everything we center on is focused generally on how the country can grow, how the people can be more bolstered and at least walk with a stiff spine and a square chin. Where they feel proud about who we are, because the Nividian people has been a proud people historically. We are very proud people. We come from a proud stock historically, and that goes deep back in our history. And I think I said last week that we probably are some of the last who are hanging on now, who can bridge the gap between the young and the history and the legacy of this country, and the young who are coming along and who has no clue. So, I mean, it's a very important and a very awesome responsibility, of course, that one should take on, and in terms of transferring the best amongst us and the best ideas and the best of our history to them. So we do take that very seriously, and we want to. We are hoping that it would make a difference, and we're hoping the awareness, the sense of awareness, would be heightened throughout the country amongst the people. So at least, I don't know. And we did one of the things we did last week, which I'm gonna just basically say, is we talked about the unincorporated corporations and the corporations. And corporations, we know, are structured entity with board and all that sort of thing, and filing is different. But the unincorporated is more like a sole proprietorship, where guys and other guys with trucks, backhoes, they get these big deals, and excavators and the likes. And not only them, but it's just an example. A lot of the income that goes out from government is unaccounted for in terms of its revenues. It's not collecting its revenues there in that area. Government loses millions of dollars in that area. And I think government has to begin to create what is called a tender board, and think about creating a tender board when these contracts come through. The tender board reviews them, reviews the applicants to the contract. And the tender board, let's say, comes from the Department of Labor, it comes from the Department of Education, the contract that is issued. Many people would apply to the tender board for the contract. The tender board makes a decision, as to the contract. The tender board now informs the Inland Revenue, and Inland Revenue would know what is on the face of the contract. Let's say it's on the face of the contract is $1 million. They know what the taxes are. That should be taken before the monies are dispensed to the Inland Revenue. Thereby, Inland Revenue gets its full share of what it's supposed to get. We don't. These sort of leakages exist in the country, and we think that needs to be tightened up in this country. And we need a tender board, a transparent tender board of people, of those who reviews these contracts. I think it would add value to the country again, and those tax dollars which are greatly needed can be used to do many things that's needed to be done in the country. And I've heard the Premier speak about, not collecting his full share of taxes. That's another example where taxes can be collected, because departments really don't they don't really speak to each other. There's no what you call there's no cross relationship in the sense that then one knows what the other really is doing. So the tender board would have that access, that level of access, as it relates to the contractors. Yeah. What do you say, Andy? Oh.
Well, what I would say to that, when it comes to government contract, there is no need for government to pay money to an individual or a company for them to pay it back to them. So if they put that system in place, government can collect their taxes from the money that they're paying out without it actually go out. And so you have to put system in place whereby government gets its taxes and people don't collect money that they ought to pay back to government and don't pay it back because they probably claim they have costs overrun and these kind of things, or the money is not properly managed and spent, and the contract is not finished, but all the money is paid out. These are things we have to look at, and government need to operate like a government, like a business, collect what is theirs and pay out only what they need to pay out.
Yeah. Yes, so I mean, I think this has been a worthwhile exercise in terms of us trying to bring at least raise the attention level to those who are in policy making to begin to look at these areas. Like I always said, I've said it in the past, and they can't see everything. They're busy. So many things are coming at them. They can't see everything. And if we are able to point things out to them and, of course, inform the public so the public would know and heighten the awareness, then at least, it would not go dead. It would not stay under the rug. So I think it's important for, these things to be flushed out and to be told, and so the public would be aware. And also, if this is done, whereby, those collection levels can go up, the emphasis on ordinary businesses and ordinary people for taxes ultimately can go down. Because you're spreading, it's now being spread more widely, and the necessity for more and more taxes to be collected will not be there, and the pressures that business people are put under. So it's just a matter of fairness and fair taxation, and in the country, and I think it can only work in a positive way for the country. So again, like I said, I hope that this part of it has been helpful. In the meantime, we'll take a break, and we'll be back in a few.
Rise, 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 rise. People, open up your eyes. Produce, that's the answer. Produce. Develop our own, use our own, and own our own. Despite our political views, we must all understand that we are part of this island. And the same stick lick in the wild goat is the same stick lick in the tame. Everybody drifting in the same boat, we all sinking just the same. Some of them are claiming that they have this country at heart, but their actions are showing they're splitting the people apart, and they're pulling and tugging. We so colorblind we can't see. 'Tis no wonder we are used and abused constantly. Rise, 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 rise. People, open up your eyes.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yes, people, we're back. Now we turn to the second half of the program, which we did say would be quite interesting. We've done a recap of last show, and we've added some meat on the bones from last show. So now this is a matter that came to us through looking at the way politics is played in this country. Now, there's a federal election that is coming up and is pending. And we looked at how it has been done in the past, and we came to the conclusion that a lot of stuff that has been done does not make much sense. All right? What we're saying, we don't believe, and I say this unequivocally, we do not believe that any representative who goes to St. Kitts 9, 10, and 11, we're talking about constituency 9, 10, and 11, which is designated to Nevis, who goes to St. Kitts to sit in the federal house, should ever be sitting in the opposition bench. That is a position that we don't see any value in. Why we don't see any value in it is because I have not known in the history of this country, and I dare anybody to tell us that in the history of this country, where have any party in Nevis, the NRP, the CCM, has ever competed against Labour, PPL, or PAM, or any other party in St. Kitts. You run your politics, it's always between the two parties in Nevis. In Nevis, all politics is local. And that's an old axiom. All politics is local, and if you're in representative politics, where you're representing and you're representing people, it seems to us that you ought to be representing the people. Now, if you go to St. Kitts, Andy, how on earth a person who competed NRP versus CCM in Nevis goes to St. Kitts, sits on the opposition bench? Now, Labour might have gotten 6, for example, or PAM may have gotten whatever number they have gotten in terms of seats in St. Kitts. When on earth did you get the notion that you should sit on an opposition bench? You didn't compete against them, first of all. And it seems to me you should be sitting with the party that's ruling, the ruling party, and caucusing with them and be in cabinet with them. I don't understand how you can before an election, pre-signal who you're going to support or who you're going to be with. When you're not on the ground in St. Kitts, you're not competing in your politics. Your politics is in number 11, number 9, or number 10. It makes no sense to go down there and sit on an opposition bench. I'll give you some historical facts. We can go all the way back. I started this federation in 83. In 1983, we formed the federation. And with a coalition with the NRP and PAM. And then we moved on, and by 1985, I think it were, 1985, we had a situation in Nevis in the fall, I think it's after September, October, somewhere around there, where we had checks to the civil servants bounced twice. Now, if there's acrimony, or if there is anger that exists, or misfeelings that exist between the parties who hold the federal government in St. Kitts, and again, right, and the party who is running the NIA in Nevis, such as in the case at that point, they are at liberty to bounce the checks. Now, let's assume all our representatives sat in caucus or sat in cabinet, in the same cabinet with the ruling party. It couldn't happen. Because we're in a position, if there is a close, if there's a six majority or 7 majority, the Nivijan representative can always affect the outcome of, at least affect whether or not that government stands, and that should be always our position. Once the politics ends in terms of, okay, vote for me, or vote for me to send me to the federal house versus NRP versus CCM, right? Vote for me to send me to, it should be a collective mind think, meaning that you're thinking on the same page. Forget your local politics in Nevis. You will get a chance to fight the local politics another day. But your job down there is to bring home the bacon. That's the only thing you're going down there to do, to represent your constituency. So you go without representation by sitting on the opposition bench. We don't think that's, in our opinion, it makes no sense. And in our opinion also, we don't see in the future, near future, there's any party saying it's going to get 8, none going to get 7 anytime soon. It's either going to be, the most anyone will get is 6, 5, 4. And anytime if you have a 5, if they get 4, you got three seats, you join, you form your government. You stay together. I don't see the point of having be sitting on an opposition bench. There's nothing to be gotten from it. You don't have a philosophical difference with any party in St. Kitts. Your philosophical difference is in Nevis with the party you compete against. So it makes no sense. And then it happened twice in 1985, I think, it bounced in a check. It happened again in 2014, bouncing a check, because there's an acrimonious relationship between them. Mind you, they've been talking about constitutional reform, Andy, for about 20-something years now, right? Because they recognize in St. Kitts, and we recognize in Nevis that Nevis always get the short end of the stick. That is why this is 113 was called in 1978 or whenever it was called. And we've been always ruminating about secession in this country, and 113 sits. The point what I'm saying to you, trying to get across, is that they've been talking the constitutional reform for 20 plus years now, and no government has advanced it. No sitting government is, because it's not within their interest. It's not within the interest to advance it, because of course they get 2 bites at the cherry. They're the federal government that represent the federation, and they're the federal government that represents St. Kitts. Grossly unfair to the people in Nevis, and it's egregious as far as I'm concerned, right? And if that is the case, why on earth it makes no sense to me that our politicians cannot see that and go down there and knock glass. The point is, you're supposed to be, when you come back here after you bring back the bake, now you bring back whatever to your constituency, whether it's 9, 11, 10, in the whatever you have to bring back here to Nevis, right? The NIA would have to at least allocate. And when the NIA is allocating or whatever, at the point of election, NIA election, you can have that argument as to how it was allocated or how things was done. But as far as I am concerned, I see no reason to be in an opposition bench. I think it's a total waste of time. What are you doing? What is your purpose? I don't know, Andy. I don't know. Maybe you can help me with that.
Well, what I would say, there's something seriously wrong with the system of government that we have. Divisions are going to the polls twice in 5 years. We are voting for a local government, and we are going back to vote for federal government. Whereas Kittitians are going to the polls once to vote for federal government. Now, you can argue that Nevis have 2 governments, but get nothing from either of them. And Nevis always get the short end of the stick, because we compete here to represent Nevis at a local government level. And you have a house in Nevis where you can go in and pass laws and do things to advance the Nevis economy and to grow the Nevis economy. But instead, the same representative run for federal office and go to St. Kitts simply to prop up a political party in St. Kitts. This makes no sense to me. And so if the party that you're propping up in St. Kitts find itself in opposition, then you are in opposition too, because you have a difference with the other party that take government. And we do believe that there's a need for constitution reform. I don't see any just reason why Nevis should be going to the polls twice in 5 years to vote for 2 governments, and none of them is representing Nevis. None of them is representing Nevisians. What we get? Simple nothing. You go back from 1983 until today, you have to ask yourself, what have Nevis achieved as opposed to what St. Kitts achieved? With 2 governments, it should be getting 2 sets of representation, but all we find happening is that these representatives go over to St. Kitts, they get a salary from the Nevis government and they get a salary from the St. Kitts government. But what is happening to the people in Nevis? Nothing. When our children leave school, they have to fly out of here to find work. They have to fly out of here to get an education. and there's no guarantee after they get an education they can come back and work, because there is nothing. 1989, we had a major investment in Nevis. Everybody know what that is. And this is 2019. What have we had? And so why two government when everybody else have one?
You know, and the two elections is a financial drain to Nevisians. It's so much injustice as it relates to the St. Kitts Nevis Compact, meaning how they come together. I mean, at every level, St. Kitts has the advantage, and it's unfair. And as a representative, you're here to represent the people, and we've always said it's all about the people. And it's all about the posterity of the country and the stability and the growth of the country and bolstering of it and making people feel better about themselves, and living richer lives in this country. And not just richer from a financial standpoint, but also richer from, a dignity standpoint. And my point here is, it's a financial drain to Nevis Treasury to run two elections. It's grossly unfair, and St. Kitts does not do it. They win at everything. The advantage, it is slanted towards them in every way. And I cannot see for the life of me, and I'm going to reiterate it over and over, why any representative of Nevis, how can you represent your people in the federal house and be on an opposition bench? How do you do that? It makes no sense, And if you look again, St. Kitts win. They look at St. Kitts right now. If you look at St. Kitts is on the global platform. If you look at St. Kitts commerce and in every sector, they're on the global platform in terms of cutting edge. They're right there. And if you look around at yourself and you look at how we are lagging because it's a financial drain to us in this country from and it's taxpayers' money. That is being used for all this thing. And again, we're not getting this constitutional reform thing. They throw it around. I think a commission or some group they had formed at some point, and nothing came of it. They get into office, everybody forgets it, and we go along lallywaggy, in terms of going down and sitting, and it makes no sense. Knocking glass. I am saying it makes no sense for a people of dignity. It does not. And if you want to preserve that and you're looking towards changing, I am advocating, I would say, over and over, if you're asked to caucus. Listen, if there's a 4-4 tie, if it's there 5-3 in St. Kitts, you go and you caucus together and form the majority of 3. Because when policy is being made and they say want to build a school in Sandy Point in number 5, right? Whoever is the minister then, right, in cabinet, or they want to build a school in Cairn in number 8. You might say in number 9 or number 10, I want to do a school next year, or some sort of advanced training school or whatever next year, and you got to vote. I ask for your support for it. So I am merely saying, because you're holding up the government now. Even if you ask to look, you don't before an election say, well, I'm going to join with this, I'll join with that one. Politics is a thing about bargaining. It's about trading. No politics stays constant. It constantly changes. Today you're my friend, tomorrow you're my enemy, or today you're my enemy, tomorrow you're my friend. It's about interests, and it's about the Nevisian people interests as far as I am concerned, Andy.
That's right. Government should be coalition. And because of the system of government we have here, where Nevis have its own government, but St. Kitts have a government that governs St. Kitts and Nevis. They should be coalition in the federal house. And in that way, you sit in cabinet and you can represent the people who vote for you and put you there. But if you associate yourself with a political party in St. Kitts and you run for election just to prop up that party and put it in government, where does Nevis stand? What do Nevis get?
But again,
absolutely nothing.
But again, I don't understand, because I recognize when you run against a party, let's say the two parties in Nevis run against each other. They may have philosophical grounds that they run on, or you know, they stand for this, or this one don't stand for that, or this one would stand. In the old days, we used to say we stand for one party stand for secession, and that flipped. You know, the other party does, so they have philosophical differences. But my point is, what common ground you have with PAM or Labour? I mean, they are, like I said, all politics is local, and it should be kept local. But in the large ambit, meaning in the larger space of your mind, as the political mind, as it relates to St. Kitts, and we're going over to St. Kitts, you know, you cannot forget your constituents, because you're a representative. That's all you're doing. You're not even in the NIA where you're administering, unless you're giving a ministry in St. Kitts. But I'm just, you know, we're talking about the people in Nevis and representing the people. And again, you cannot carry the acrimony between the two parties in Nevis and carry them to St. Kitts. You understand what I'm saying? The thing is about getting things done for your constituents in Nevis. So the difference you have in Nevis, you're supposed to go as a black if you're thinking Nevis. Because they're thinking St. Kitts. That's all they're thinking. I remember up until 2008, correct me if I'm wrong, that Nevis was ticking over. My hotel industry was kicking. I mean, really kicking. The kind of revenues the tourism industry was bringing in, St. Kitts was supplanted by the kind of numbers we're pulling in Nevis, right? Revenue numbers and just numbers, period. And, you know, it was, okay, nothing was going on necessarily in St. Kitts at that point. And Douglas was in power since 94, 95, wherever he was in power. And that's a number of years. And we're talking about a good number of years. And suddenly, 2010, he came up on the SIDF. I think it was around 2010, thereabout. You know, SIDF, and bam, voila, you know, it exploded. Well, of course, we got nothing out of it. Zero. When you're talking about billions of dollars, and if you got $1 million or $10 million, I count that as nothing. We got nothing out of it. And for the life of me, for politicians to go on proper, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. You know, listen to me. There's a thing called love, eh? You gotta love your people. And you have to be beholden to the people who you're representing. And to me, if you are those things, then you ought to bring home the bacon to the people. And as far as I am concerned, they really don't care. They have shown in the past they really don't care to have billions of dollars in a fund that's coming in. And you got your sister island over there, and nothing was coming over here. Of course, Team Unity came along, and Team Unity registered some good numbers in terms of, you know, but late in the game. That was late in the game when the SIDF, you know, when at least the passport issue and all the selling of passport, you know, was going on its way down. But they registered good numbers in terms of how much money and that came back. Yeah, but still, it's not enough. It should have been, you know, 2-3 times that. But it's okay. My point is, historically speaking, they take care of themselves. They have 2 bites at the same cherry. And if you're sitting again in caucus or you're sitting in cabinet making decisions and you know about policy or about allocations of funds and where you're going to spend money for the federal government and when gifts grants come to the country, where it's going to go and all that thing, you have a chance now to truly show your representation, how you represent the people. But if you sit on an opposition bench, you're carrying your acrimony and your silliness that you have between you and, you know, both parties, and can't see the bigger picture. To me, that needs to stop.
Well, that is so true. And I must add this, though. It is said that money was given to Nevis under the present administration. But we Nevis are not feeling it. We are not seeing it. So where does it go? How it affects Nevisian's life? There has to be a better plan than what we are seeing. And Nevisian should not settle for handouts. Nevisian should be a part of the process. And if we are not a part of the process, we must move away from the system. Because we think we are capable, and, well, not think, we know that we are capable of running our own affairs and doing much better than we are doing, having 2 governments. right? The government doesn't serve us any purpose,
Is it-
right? We need to be running our own affairs, managing our affairs, looking after our people, growing our economy, and making sure that our children, when they leave school, we don't have to export them to other countries, but they can stay right here and have a good living.
You know, I mean, a lot of our people go abroad and they go to school, and they're all, you know, they're snapped up quickly around the world. I mean, you know, Nigerians generally do phenomenally well when they go abroad, and the companies and entities, you know, generally pick them up, and there's nothing for them to return home. And of course, again, I think that the government, in terms of the dollar per square foot, I get the idea. I get where they're going, because you can only move the country but so far. You need these bright minds to come back to the country, and I don't have a problem with that. I would believe me, I welcome that. I'm just saying they must come back, and I keep saying again, I piggyback on that, they must come back. I think with a business plan in hand, not to go and sit in the civil service, because, you know, and to make themselves somehow in the civil service feel relevant by frustrating people.
Well, I agree that they must come back with a business plan in hand. But we have to create an economy in Nevis. We have to create something for them to come back to. And I don't see any effort by any administration in Nevis over all these years to do such. Our people need to come back home after they go abroad and they spend all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to educate themselves. They come back here and the government look at them and tell them, well, we can't pay you for your degree, which is unfair to these people, and that's why they don't come back. What we need to do is to develop our resources in Nevis and stop looking at St. Kitts and trying to see what you could get, counting the coppers and the pennies that St. Kitts is collecting and claiming that a portion of that is yours. We have a government in Nevis, and our government must go to work. Our government must go to work and develop the resources here, develop their people, create economy, and encourage their people to come back home and stay at home.
Yeah, again, you know, it's a mixed bag. This whole thing about this whole thing, you know, of representation. While we're in it, in this federation, it has to work to our advantage, and it has to work for every citizen in this country, and all them little ones come in advantage. And you cannot have, I mean, even, you know, like, you cannot have, you just cannot have a two-tier system. It's just not right. And no St. Kitts politician going to put forward constitutional reform once they get in power. They ain't going to do it. It's not to their advantage. They love it, you know, and we cannot play suckers to it and continue it. I think it's to our demise. It's, you know, it works against the future. I mean, if we were able to develop our economy like they do there, we can have so much more returnees coming back and be placed in positions, you know, much like they do, to some effect. They are in an enviable position because, you know, I can't blame them. That, you know, all politics is local, and they play to their base and their politics. But we have to play to ours. We're not good. I do not want us to be treated as second-class citizens in this country. I do not want us to be treated. I want our representatives to be aware, not just aware, but be mindful of their purpose. Be mindful of your purpose. Your singular purpose is like singularity. You know, your purpose is one thing, one laser-like focus. To be in cabinet, and make decisions, and serious decisions that has consequences, positive consequences for the electorate that elect you. The people you represent in your constituency. We have 3 coming out in Nevis. You know, you cannot have people working against each other. It makes no political, it makes no financial, no economic, it makes no, no kind of sense. I just don't get it.
Well, Nigerians must know what they're voting for and who they are voting for. We have to understand that when we go to think it as federal representative, we are representative of people in Nevis. And it is people in Nevis who vote for us. And we must feel their representation. We must see their representation. It's all right to go down there and back up a political party and put them in power, but at the end of the day, what have we benefited from it in Nevis? Basically nothing. And you know the hard part of it, every time they have to give something to Nevis, they see us as piglets sucking them. But when they want to use us, right, and they want to get in government and get representation, they come over and they make all kind of offers. We have to understand that we are not supposed to be selling ourselves. Our political leaders are not supposed to be selling out Nigerians in Sinket, and that is exactly what is happening to us.
I remember, just a quickie. I remember the last when Unity, Team Unity was formed. I remember the Labour folks them go on the radio, right? Douglas and the rest of them went on the radio at some point and said, "What? Our money, something to the effect of our money going over." Because they would had an arrangement, a couple $100 million arrangement, our money going over. Went on Freedom Radio and said something that I mean, it was just. I guess they're playing to their politics, and their base, but I understand it. But my point is, we have to be so aware of what they do. You have to know what your game is. And your game, the petty differences, we cannot carry them over the water. We must go as a unit at all and sit in caucus and sit and form governments and sit and form policy. Again, I reiterate it over and over. It is important, for people, at least for these leaders, to begin to think like that, like this. Because, like I say, when I look back and I see where we came from in 1983 and where we are right now, for example, 1993, when we had that chaos 4-4 in Sinket, 4-4, we had a grand time. It was a good opportunity, of course, for all three seats, collectively to be forming the government. It turned the country upside down by one person. One went over and it became a 5-4, whatever it was, and create chaos because it was not a clear majority. My point is, right? We have to understand what we're about, and if a person knows what they're about, then they can forge direction and create direction. And you must be clear-minded, clairvoyant, and understand yourself and understand where you're coming from and where you want to go. And that's just basically where I stand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody around the world who is listening to Vaughan Radio tonight from the PDA, People Democratic Alliance. We'll come to you again. We'll be with you next week, Monday, to bring to you a new plethora of issues, or a new set of issues that you've probably never heard of. There are a number of things that we'll talk about that we think make sense, and the public needs to churn on and begin to think through. And of course, the political architects and the policy architects need to begin to think through. Thank you again, all the way from Nevis. Love.
Rise, 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 rise. People, open up your eyes. At last, at long last, at last. Out of chaos and strife, we found a hope we've never known. A glimpse, just a glimmer, just a gleam. But a flicker of light, like I have never seen. The voices of my people tells me that we're reaching maturity. The spirit shows that determination for a new society. Though plagued by injustice, misfortune and strain, and constant oppression, I force our change. Though we fail to get along, there's one thing we have in common. The oppression we bear will forge us as one. Rise, 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 rise. People, open up your eyes.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or